God often calls us to step out in faith, not knowing if we will succeed or fail. If we are faithful, He will see us through it all. We all know it's one of the greatest Christian animated series for children, Veggie Tales. It has reached millions of families worldwide. But what inspired co-creator Mike Naraki to leave his study and desire for a medical career to venture out into the world of animation? How did God change his life and faith through the ups and downs of one of the greatest Christian video series of all time? This is his story of unshakable faith. This is today's life. Mike, thank you so much for inviting me into your home in the world of Veggie Tales. Now, what would Larry the Cucumber say to me right now?
Welcome to my home, my house of vegetables.
Veggie Tales has been an amazing property and around the world. Take me back to where it all started.
Wow. Well, maybe I could go back to even where I felt the call, to do ministry. I grew up loving to make people laugh. I was a big fan of a lot of different comedies. Mel Brooks, the Dr. Demento Radio Hour was probably my favorite thing. It was parody music, so it's where Weird Al got his start. So I just loved making people laugh, and I came to Christ when I was in middle school. So my dad had just become a believer, and all of us. I grew up with three brothers and my mom. We kind of all noticed we had a new dad, and were interested in what that was, and so we started going to church. And for me, it was watching a Billy Graham crusade on TV.
Love Billy Graham.
Yeah.
Love
So I came to Christ in middle school. And I found an outlet for that creativity through the church that I started going to. So if there was a play or a choir or anything I could be in, I loved doing that. But I felt a call later in high school to serve in ministry, but I didn't know what that looked like. For me, I had this passion for drama and music and theater, but I didn't have a model for what that could look like in a ministry angle. However, my dad was an engineer, my mom was a nurse, my older brother was a chemistry major, so I kind of took those models and I said, well, maybe, and then the church that I was going to was very missions-minded, and I thought, well, what I'm going to do for God is I'm going to be a medical missionary, and so that's the direction I'm going to head off on. So I went to a small denominational college up in the Minneapolis area. Crown College is what it's called now, St. Paul Bible College is at the time, and that's where I met Phil Vischer, who's also known as Bob the Tomato. And so Phil and I began collaborating on a puppet team there. So it was a student ministry. All the students were required to do a ministry, and I'd done some puppetry in high school, and so had he. And so we just really hit it off creatively. We would love to just, write these crazy stories, and we traveled around with our troupe going to different locations, and we'd like to say we roamed the Minnesota countryside scaring the Baptists. That was our favorite line. And so, but we found this creative collaboration. We got to be really good friends. But he had a plan to go to film school. That's what he wanted to do. I wanted to go to medical school. We were at the small college. Both of us thought, well, we'll just go here for a while because we didn't have those educational opportunities there. So we ended up going our separate ways after a year and a half there. But then I ended up moving to Chicago to go to pursue pre-med. Which is where Phil was living as well.
Isn't that interesting how he brought you back?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Veggie Tales has just boomed. Take me back. Do you remember the days when everybody wanted Veggie Tales?
It was so surprising because animation is sort of the thing where you're in the studio making the donuts, you're making the animation, you're producing it, and then you're sending it out, and people are watching it, away from where it's being produced. It's like if you're in theater, you're in front of a live audience, you're seeing how people react. it was really interesting to start getting the feedback back in those early years, because we loved the shows. We'd send it out, and then we started getting feedback. Oh, you know, people are liking this, and they want you to make another show. Okay, make another show. And then you start to hear that college kids are having Veggie Tales watching parties, and we're like, really?
T-shirts,
yeah, exactly.
toys.
All those sort of things. And you know, we were really new to it, and but it was really, you know, it was very surreal to know that, you know, it was really catching on. And even those first few years, from 1993 to about 1995. We were, you know, just still struggling to keep the lights on, even though, you know, we were getting advances on production. They were still really lean, and, you know, we were, you know, struggling just to produce the shows. But, you know, over, you know, from around 1995, 96, it really started to catch on. And hey, why don't you guys do an album too? Because you can just combine some of the songs that you've used in your, you know, in your videos to make a music album. So so we threw a few of the songs together, and then the album sold, you know, like crazy, and it was just very, very surprising for us. And we're up in Chicago, which, you know, we were in the production field in Chicago, but Chicago is a very commercial, you know, they do a lot of commercials. It's not really an entertainment town. And so for us, just to kind of see, you know, this whole thing blooming all over the United States was really, you know, it was, you know, a surprise.
You know, God takes us through those successes and then failures.
Yeah.
Veggie Tales, or the company, had some really rough times.
Yeah.
Can you share that with us?
Yeah, you know, we grew a lot in you know, from about 96 to 2000, and we overextended ourselves. And so by the time we were in production of our first feature film, which was Jonah, we were self-financing that. At the time, nobody wanted to do a faith-based film. Now you see a lot of faith-based films. For them, you know, we couldn't get, you know, outside funding for that because people just weren't doing it. And so we were funding Jonah from ourselves, and then we had to do that, we had to slow down production of our DVDs or VHS series at the time. And so we overextended ourselves. We were also launching a new property, 321 Penguins. And by the time the movie came out, we went through bankruptcy. And so we basically lost everything. Thankfully, the brand was still very strong, and we got purchased, and, you know, Veggie Tales was able to continue. But that process of growing and losing everything, and it was just, that was a really tough time to go through, and just coming to terms with what that meant. But in the end, it was, for me, it was, I remember there was a Twyla Paris song at the time, God is in Control, that I just remember, you know, listening to when it would come on the radio. And it was just very meaningful knowing that, you know, this isn't in my control, it's in God's control. And whatever He thinks He wants to do with it, you know, that's up to Him. And I just need to be faithful, and I need to do what He wants me to do in the whole situation.
So one of the questions I want to ask before we close is how your faith has taken you from success to, you know, going through the bankruptcy to where you are now. And
you know, for me, it's a matter of, you know, you think of Job, you know, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away, blessed be the name of the Lord. Where do you sit? Just that attitude, because I think at times too, even when you're in a time of plenty, there's that, you can feel guilty about that too. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow, you know, look what I have, you know, people don't have, maybe I shouldn't have this much. Or when you don't have, when you're in your time of need, it's like, wow, God isn't giving this to me, you know. But I think in both of those places, if you can just sit in a place of gratitude, you know, the Lord has given this to me, thank you, God. Or the Lord has taken this away from me, thank you, God, because there's other things I can learn through this, you know. So it's not necessarily seeing material things as a blessing from God. It's just what it is, and just relying on God in everything, whether in plenty or whether in need.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for sharing your life and your stories, and you have been such a blessing to parents and children around the world.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Isn't it wonderful how God has given us all gifts and talents to share His message of love, grace, and forgiveness? Remember, you too have a story to tell that will give Him honor and glory. This is Today's Life. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.